Your spiritual awareness is not setting you free, it's trapping you. If you're the man who knows all the spiritual laws, meditates diligently, can quote ancient texts, yet still finds himself with stagnant finances, elusive relationships, or a gnawing sense that despite all your awareness, your life just isn't working, that quiet frustration is the universe mirroring back your greatest self-deception. You affirm, you visualize, you discuss cosmic truths, yet nothing ever truly shifts. For years, I too existed in that intellectual prison, dissecting philosophies and feeling profoundly aware, yet my own life remained profoundly unmanifested. I was a struggling dancer, deeply versed in esoteric wisdom, but devoid of tangible success. It was only when I was confronted with the simple, undeniable truth of living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not just knowing it, that everything changed. Within 3 weeks, I manifested a consistent income, dissolving my financial struggles entirely. This was not knowledge, it was absolute assumption. In this video, I will reveal precisely why your intellectual awareness has become your greatest obstacle. You will learn the exact method I employed to bypass the mind and create deliberate reality, moving from mere knowing to instant having. Fail to grasp this critical distinction, and you are condemned to a lifetime of intellectual spiritual debate, watching your true desires remain perpetually out of reach. This knowledge is not optional. Now, let me show you exactly how this works. I promised you the undeniable method to consciously create your reality, and I will deliver it. We are about to embark on a journey through the fundamental laws of existence, the very principles I discovered and tested in my own life and in the lives of countless others. I will break down 8 immutable laws that, when understood and applied, transform you from a passive observer into the master architect of your life. Each principle builds upon the last, deepening your understanding and revealing the profound power dwelling within you. By the end, you will possess not just knowledge, but the direct experience of how to command your world. Pay attention, for what you are about to hear will forever dismantle your old beliefs about limitations. The first and most foundational principle you must grasp, the bedrock upon which all other truths rest, is this: your imagination creates reality. This is not a philosophy, it is the ultimate fact of existence. What you imagine, consciously or unconsciously, is what you experience. This world, this vast panorama of life, is nothing more than your solidified imagination pushed out into physical form. Every circumstance, every person, every condition you encounter is a direct reflection, a shadow of an imaginal act. I recall a pivotal moment early in my own journey, a time when I was struggling financially, living in a small apartment in New York City. My desire was to return to my beloved Barbados, but I lacked the funds for passage. I had no job, no prospects, and certainly no immediate means to finance such a trip. Common sense dictated that it was impossible. But I had been taught by my great teacher, Abdullah, that imagination was the only reality. He challenged me daily, "Are you in Barbados, Neville?" And I would always say, "No, Abdullah, I am here in New York." He would then sternly declare, "Then you are not in Barbados." I decided to apply this principle with absolute conviction. Each night as I prepared for sleep, I would lie in my bed, close my eyes, and imagine myself already in Barbados. I didn't merely think about Barbados, I felt myself there. I imagined the warm, humid air, the scent of the tropical flowers, the sound of the tree frogs, the feel of the sand between my toes. I would visualize my sister standing beside me, feeling the joy of our reunion, hearing her voice, touching her hand. I pictured my familiar childhood room, the exact window overlook. In the garden, I made it so real, so intense, that I could almost physically taste the sea salt on the air. This went on for several weeks, every single night, until I fell asleep in the assumption that I was already there. The physical world offered no explanation. There was no money, no ticket, no ship. But then, an unexpected letter arrived from my family in Barbados, not offering money, but stating that my brother had a dream about me being home, and they collectively decided to send me the fare, purely out of this dream. They sent it. I was astonished by the speed and the sheer unlikelihood of the bridge of incidents that manifested. I had no idea how it would happen, but my sustained imaginal act compelled the physical world to conform to my inner vision. I sailed for Barbados on December 2nd, 1933, exactly as I had seen and felt it, without having paid a cent myself. My imagination created the way. Now let me ask you, what if I told you that this power is not unique to me, but is the divine inheritance of every man and woman? Your mind is not a passive receiver of reality, it is the active projector of it. The subconscious mind, often misunderstood as a storage locker for memories, is actually the fertile ground where your imaginal seeds take root. When you consistently impress an image or a feeling upon your subconscious, it accepts it as fact. It does not discern between a vividly imagined experience and a physically experienced one. It simply registers the impression and then sets about externalizing it. This is why imagination is the only reality. It is the creative power of God within you. Most men live by what their outer senses dictate. They see lack and they believe in lack. They encounter obstacles and they surrender to those obstacles. They react to the apparent circumstances of their lives, feeling powerless, constantly swept up in the current of external events. They blame luck, fate, or others for their misfortunes, never realizing that they are the very source of their own experience through their unconscious imagination. But the man who understands this law knows that external reality is merely a delayed reflection. He never allows the outer world to dictate his inner state. He persistently and consciously uses his imagination, knowing that whatever he impresses upon himself in feeling, regardless of present circumstances, must eventually appear. He knows his imagination is not fantasy, but the very chisel with which he carves his destiny. He operates from the conviction that his inner world dictates the outer, not the other way around. He moves from being a victim of life to the master of his fate, always, without exception. This affirmation is a declaration of your true identity and power. It cuts through centuries of limiting beliefs and installs the truth of your being directly into your core. Say it aloud, feel the power vibrating in your chest, and know that you are speaking the ultimate truth of who you are. Repeat this with me, with absolute conviction. I am imagination. I am the creative power of God. My every thought and feeling shapes my world. I am the sole architect of my reality. Say this every morning as you awaken and every night before sleep. Write it down. Speak it into your mirror. Let it become the unwavering truth that governs your entire being. The second immutable principle, which elevates mere thought into creative power, is this: feeling is the secret. It is not enough to simply think about your desire. You must feel it as real. Feeling is the language of the subconscious, the living breath that animates your imaginal act. An idea impressed on the subconscious only manifests if it is saturated with feeling. Without feeling, your imagination remains barren, a mere daydream. Feeling is the secret source, the fire that transforms the abstract into the concrete. I once knew a young woman who deeply desired a specific partnership, a loving and stable relationship with a man who lies in allowing, not forcing. This is the mark of a true master. This affirmation is a command for release and trust, allowing the universe to orchestrate your desires flawlessly. It empowers you to let go of anxiety and rest in the certainty of your manifestation. Speak it with a sense of calm authority and deep faith. Say this now, with peaceful conviction. I have planted my desire, and now I release it fully to the infinite power within. I detach from the how and the when, trusting in perfect timing and perfect manifestation. It is done. Use this when you feel anxiety about your desire creeping in. It is a powerful reminder that your work is complete and the universe is now at work on your behalf. Now you have learned the 8 immutable principles that govern conscious creation. Imagination creates reality. Feeling is the secret, the law of assumption, the state akin to sleep, revision, the bridge of incidents, persistence in the assumption, and detachment from the outcome. These are not mere theories. They are the blueprint of existence, the very laws of God revealing themselves through you. The question now is not if they work, but if you will apply them. Here is exactly how to apply this tonight, starting right now, to bring your most cherished desire into your physical experience. This is your personal ritual of creation, a sacred appointment with your own divine power, leading you to the consistent, conscious manifestation of desired states and circumstances within weeks to a few months. 1. Define your desire. Be utterly clear about what you truly want. Do not equivocate. Write it down in precise detail. What is the end result? 2. Craft your scene. Create a short, simple, vivid imaginal scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Do not imagine the how. Imagine the what in its completion. What would you see, hear, touch, taste, smell, and most importantly, feel if your desire were already a physical fact? For example, if you desire a new car, don't imagine test driving it. Imagine parking it in your garage, feeling the steering wheel, hearing the engine purr as you turn it off, and feeling the profound satisfaction of ownership. If it's a relationship, imagine a simple act like hearing your partner's voice on the phone, feeling their hand in yours, or seeing a ring on your finger. Make it brief, clear, and powerful. 3. Enter SATS. As you prepare for sleep tonight, lie down in your bed. Close your eyes and consciously relax every part of your body. Let your thoughts drift, allowing yourself to enter that drowsy, sleepy state, the state akin to sleep. Do not rush this. Let go of the day's concerns. 4. Enact your scene. In this relaxed, receptive state, begin to repeatedly enact your chosen imaginal scene. Do not just see it, feel it. Immerse yourself completely in the emotion of the wish fulfilled. Live in that moment as if it is happening now. Loop the scene over and over, gently, lovingly, until the feeling of satisfaction becomes so profound that you naturally drift into sleep within that feeling. This is the law of assumption in action. 5. Persist and detach. During your waking hours, persist in this assumption. Whenever doubt creeps in, or the outer world seems to contradict your desire, consciously return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Briefly reenact your scene or simply feel the satisfaction. Then detach from the outcome. Do not fret over the how or the when. Trust that the bridge of incidents is forming, unseen. Your only job is to maintain the feeling of the end. If negative memories arise, revise them immediately. Within weeks to a few months, depending on the scale and your consistency in application, you will begin to notice undeniable shifts. You will see the bridge of incidents appearing in your physical world, leading you effortlessly toward your desired manifestation. Do not underestimate the power of seemingly small changes. These are the first tremors of the earthquake of creation you have set in motion. Be alert, be expectant, and celebrate every sign that confirms the truth of your inner vision. You thought this was too good to be true, but now you understand that this is the fundamental law of existence itself. It is the truth behind all creation, the very nature of God, which is your own wonderful human imagination. There is no too good for the divine. You feared you weren't spiritual enough, but now you recognize that spirituality is simply recognizing and utilizing the divine power of imagination within you, which is your birthright. There is no special elite. This power is inherent in every single one of you. You believed your past defined you, but now you comprehend the power of revision, knowing that you can rewrite your personal history and liberate yourself from its perceived limitations. Your past is only as real as your present memory of it. You suspected it only works for certain people, but now you have seen through my own experiences and those of others that these laws are universal, operating without exception for all who apply them. There is no favoritism in the law. You thought you needed to take physical action first, but now you understand that all true action begins in imagination and that the physical world is merely a delayed reflection. The true action is internal. The external actions are simply the automatic unfolding of the bridge of incidents. How does imagination affect the physical world? Your imagination, imbued with feeling, is the creative power that impresses the subconscious mind. The subconscious then acts as the ultimate architect, compelling the physical world, people, circumstances, events, to conform to the imaginal blueprint you've provided. The physical world is merely the mirror of your inner state. What if you have deeply ingrained negative patterns? This is precisely why persistence and revision are crucial. Consistent, daily application of your desired feeling, coupled with the deliberate revision of past negative experiences, systematically overwrites and dissolves those ingrained patterns, replacing them with new, desirable ones. It is a spiritual reprogramming. Why do some desires manifest slowly or not at all for you? This is due to a lack of persistence, an inability to maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and often unconscious attachment or worry that sends mixed signals. Doubt, fear, and intellectual struggle dilute the power of your imaginal act. When you assume, persist, and detach, manifestation is swift and certain. Is it truly done the moment you imagine it? Yes, in the realm of imagination, in the fourth dimension, it is absolutely done. The physical manifestation is simply the temporal unfolding of that already accomplished fact. Trust that once you have truly felt the wish fulfilled, the seed has been planted. How do you stop accidental creation of unwanted things? By becoming consciously aware of your inner conversations, your dominant feelings, and your recurring imaginal acts. Use revision to correct any unwanted inner states or perceived outer events, and consistently return to the feeling of your desired state. Your conscious control of imagination and feeling is the ultimate protection. Tonight you face a choice. Will you continue to live as a creature of circumstance, swayed by the winds of external events, constantly reacting to a world you believe is outside your control? Or will you embrace your divine inheritance, claim your power, and become the conscious creator you were always meant to be? Will you return to old habits of wishing and hoping from a place of lack, or will you bravely, persistently, and with absolute conviction, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled? There is no middle ground. The Lord demands a decision. The truths I have shared with you today are life-altering. They are meant to be lived, not just heard. Play this again tomorrow. Return to this teaching daily, weekly, until these principles become so ingrained in your being that you live them effortlessly. Let these words sink into your subconscious, becoming the new foundation of your reality. Embrace this journey, for it is the journey of remembering who you truly are. God in human form, the operant power of your world. Now let's dig deeper. You have the 8 principles laid before you, a roadmap to your creative power. But for many, especially those of you who consider yourselves spiritually aware, who read the books, who attend the lectures, who feel you understand these truths intellectually, there's a hidden peril, a trap, and it's this trap that has kept you from the tangible, joyous manifestations you truly desire, leaving you with that gnawing emptiness I spoke of. You see, true spiritual awareness is not accumulated knowledge. It is embodied reality, and your current external circumstances are the only honest mirror of your true consciousness, not the concepts you can articulate. Listen closely, because this next principle, the law of unified consciousness, will expose the biggest barrier you unknowingly erect against your own good. It explains precisely why your high vibration is actually attracting the very lack you despise. The mirror of man, why judging others blocks your own abundance. This is not a suggestion. It is an immutable law of your being. Every man, every woman, every circumstance you observe in your outer world is but a reflection of a state within your own consciousness. To judge another, to label them unaware, low vibration, ignorant, or less than, is to impress that very state upon your own subconscious mind, and it must then be externalized in your own experience. You are in that very act condemning a part of yourself. I witnessed this clearly in the case of a brilliant, insightful student of mine in New York, a man named Arthur. Arthur was steeped in spiritual texts, could quote every master, and often spoke of the unenlightened masses with a kind of resigned pity. He saw himself as elevated, as operating on a higher plane of understanding. Yet his own life was a series of financial struggles, strained relationships, and a profound sense of isolation. He had a deep desire to launch a spiritual center, to teach others, but found himself constantly met with resistance, no funding, no suitable venue, and those he tried to recruit seemed to fall away. He came to me frustrated. "Neville," he said, "I understand the laws, I meditate, I visualize, I assume, but the world resists me. The people are so blind, so caught up in their material pursuits, they simply don't get it." I looked at him and said, "Arthur, your world is simply reflecting your inner conversation. You call them blind, and so your vision, your desire is blocked. You call them caught up, and so you are caught up in lack. I explained to him this principle, that the outer world, including other people, is but yourself pushed out. To see imperfection in another is to activate that very vibration within yourself. To judge their material pursuits is to judge the divine impulse for abundance that dwells in all, including yourself. I instructed him to revise his perspective entirely. When he saw someone he considered unaware, he was to immediately, in his imagination, clothe them in the light of perfect understanding, prosperity, and joy. He was to assume that everyone he encountered was a magnificent expression of God, manifesting their highest good. He was to bless them, silently, in his mind. And crucially, he was to stop lamenting their perceived state. This was a profound challenge for him. It felt, to his intellectual mind, like ignoring reality, but he persisted. He started by blessing the rude cashier, the slow driver, the ignorant politician. He actively, consciously, chose to see the divine in every face, every situation. He began to feel a warmth, a connection to humanity he had never experienced. Within a month, the isolation began to dissolve. People started approaching him, drawn to his newfound warmth. An old friend, whom he had previously dismissed as too materialistic, unexpectedly offered a donation to his vision for a spiritual center. And then, a perfect venue suddenly became available through an unusual circumstance, offered at a price he could afford. The very people he had once judged became his bridge of incidents. His world, which had been stagnating, began to flow with ease and abundance. The people had not changed. He had changed his inner conception of them, and thus changed his world. Here's the brutal truth most teachers won't tell you. Your spiritual awareness is not measured by how many esoteric books you've read or how eloquently you can speak of cosmic truths. It is measured by the quality of your inner state, and that state is immediately reflected in the physical reality you experience. The subconscious mind does not discriminate. When you habitually think and feel judgment, scorn, or pity for others, you are impressing upon your subconscious the state of separation, of lack, of imperfection. And your subconscious, being the fertile ground it is, will inevitably bring forth fruit of that very seed, but it will be your fruit, manifested in your own life. You believe you are separate from them, and so you manifest separation. Most men who consider themselves spiritually evolved fall into this trap. They believe their intellectual understanding shields them from the lower vibrations of others. They speak of raising their vibration, while silently, or even openly, judging the unenlightened masses around them. They create a spiritual hierarchy in their mind, putting themselves at the top, yet their bank accounts are empty, their relationships strained, and their opportunities scarce. They are waiting for the world to catch up to their perceived wisdom, never realizing they are creating the very discord they observe. But the master who understands the law of unified consciousness knows there is only one consciousness. He knows that every individual is God in expression, and to see anything less than perfection in another is to deny it within himself. He actively blesses all he sees, knowing that by uplifting his conception of others, he elevates his own state of being and creates a world of harmony and abundance for himself. He doesn't just know it, he lives it. He realizes that judging the unaware actively prevents his own manifestations from appearing in his world, because that judgment creates an internal resistance to the flow of all good. Stop. Hear these words carefully. If you leave without understanding this, you'll continue to struggle. This affirmation cuts through the illusion of separation and implants the truth of unity, clearing the path for your own manifestations. Repeat this with me with absolute heartfelt conviction. I am the perfection of God, and I see only the perfection of God in all. Through me, abundance flows to all I encounter, and so abundance flows to me. Whisper this 10 times whenever you feel even a flicker of judgment or superiority arise. Let it dissolve the walls you have unknowingly built between yourself and your good. The illusion of linear causation. Why effort kills creation now? Let's confront another subtle, yet devastating, trap for those who intellectually grasp these laws but fail to manifest consistently. The belief in linear causation and the insistence on effort. You've been conditioned to believe that you must work for things, strive for things, force things to happen. This deeply ingrained belief, even among spiritual seekers, is a poison to creation. It undermines the very law of assumption and the bridge of incidence. I knew a man, a shrewd businessman named Thomas, who came to me for counsel. He had built a modest empire, but always through immense struggle and ceaseless hustle. He was exhausted, plagued by stress, and felt a constant pressure to make things happen. He wanted to expand his business significantly, but every logical, strategic move he made was met with brick walls and delays. He was trying to acquire a new property to house his expansion, a specific building that seemed perfect, but negotiations had stalled for months, costing him immense frustration and lost opportunities. He prided himself on his work ethic, his ability to make it happen. He had read Joseph Murphy's works on the subconscious, but still believed he needed to exert physical effort to push for the outcome. I told him, Thomas, your effort is creating resistance. You are trying to build the bridge instead of simply walking across it in your imagination. You are creating from a state of struggle, and so struggle is what you meet. I instructed him to stop all outward effort concerning that particular property for 1 week. His mind reeled at the suggestion. It felt like surrender. Instead, he was to go into SATS each night and imagine a simple scene. Himself, keys in hand, opening the door to that specific new property, feeling the cool air of the empty space, feeling the immense relief and satisfaction of ownership. He was to thank the universe, thank God, for the effortless acquisition. And during the day, whenever the thought of the stalled negotiations arose, he was to immediately return to the feeling of having the keys, of the property being his, and then detaching from the how. He was not to call his lawyer, not to push his agent, not to worry about the steps. Thomas, with great difficulty, followed my instructions. Yuli cherished her. She had been through several disappointing experiences, always attracting men who were either emotionally unavailable or simply not serious. She came to me utterly disheartened, convinced that she was simply unlucky in love. I told her, your luck is merely your sustained inner feeling, pushed out. You are feeling the absence of love, and so you create its absence. I instructed her to stop looking for a man and instead to feel herself as already loved, cherished, and in a committed, wonderful relationship. Her challenge was significant because her current reality offered no evidence of this. She felt lonely, rejected, and frustrated, but I pressed her to ignore the outward appearance. Each night as she lay in bed, she would imagine specific scenes that implied her desire was already fulfilled. She didn't imagine meeting a man. She imagined waking up next to him, feeling his arm around her, hearing him whisper, "Good morning," feeling utterly adored and secure. She imagined wearing a ring on her finger and feeling its weight and significance. She focused not on getting the man, but on being the woman who already had the man, who was already loved and cherished. She immersed herself in the feeling of being wanted, respected, and deeply connected. She did this consistently, even when doubts arose during the day. She would deliberately return to the feeling of being loved. Within 6 weeks, a colleague from her workplace, someone she had known for years but never considered in a romantic light, began to express profound interest in her. He started small, with kind gestures and attentive conversations. Soon, their connection deepened, and within a few months, they were engaged. He was precisely the man she had imagined, loving, stable, and completely devoted. She later told me that the feeling of security and adoration he gave her was exactly the feeling she had cultivated within herself nightly. The manifestation was the perfect externalization of her internal feeling. Hear me now, this is how creation works. It is never a coincidence. The subconscious mind does not respond to intellectual argument or mere wishes. It responds to feeling, to the emotional tone of your mental state. Think of your subconscious as fertile soil. Your thoughts are seeds, but it is the feeling that is the water and sunlight causing those seeds to sprout and grow. When you feel a state, you are impressing that state upon the subconscious. If you feel lack, the subconscious accepts lack and manifests it. If you feel abundance, the subconscious accepts abundance and manifests it. This is not some abstract concept. It is the neurological mechanism of your being. Your emotions trigger chemical reactions, creating patterns in your brain that reinforce the perceived reality, which your subconscious then works tirelessly to make physical. To feel is to believe, and to believe is to experience. Most men make the grave error of wishing for things from a place of desire for them, which implies their present absence. They spend their days feeling the lack of what they want, lamenting their current circumstances, or trying desperately to figure out how their desire will come about. They intellectualize their wishes, creating endless mental scenarios without ever touching the emotional core. They pray from a posture of begging, which reinforces their powerlessness, but the man who understands this law cultivates the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He doesn't beg, he thanks, he doesn't wish, he assumes. He enters the feeling state of already having what he desires, knowing that this inner feeling is the creative force. He knows that his job is not to figure out the how, but simply to maintain the feeling of the what being done. He becomes the living embodiment of his desire, and the world must inevitably reflect that inner state. There are no exceptions to this law. The third principle, the very key to unlocking your creative potential, is T. Law of assumption. This means you must assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. You must act as if, live as if, and believe as if your desire is already a present fact, not a future hope. Assumption is faith in action. It is choosing to occupy the state of being that implies your desire is done, and persisting in that state, regardless of what your outer senses tell you. This is where most men falter, for they allow the evidence of their senses to contradict their chosen assumption. My own journey to Barbados, which I spoke of, perfectly illustrates this. I didn't merely wish to be in Barbados, I assumed I was already there. I lay in my bed in New York, but I closed my eyes and assumed the feeling of being in my sister's house in Barbados. My physical eyes saw my New York room, but my inner eyes saw Barbados. My ears heard the sounds of New York traffic, but my inner ears heard the distinct sounds of Barbados. I felt the humid air, the sand, the presence of my family. I did not question how I would get there or when. I simply assumed the state, the feeling of already being there. This unwavering assumption was the key. This principle extends to all areas of life. I recall another time, years later, when I desired a larger apartment in New York. I was living in a rather cramped space, and while it served its purpose, I yearned for something more spacious and comfortable. Instead of scouring newspapers or endlessly walking the streets, I simply began to live in the assumption of having a more expansive apartment. Each night, as I prepared for sleep, I would imagine myself in a much larger space. I didn't just imagine a larger apartment. I imagined specific details. I would walk around in my imagination, feeling the smooth, cool floor under my bare feet, opening imaginary doors to larger rooms, feeling the expansive air. I would sit in an imaginary armchair by a much larger window, looking out over a different, grander view of the city. I felt the sense of peace and comfort that came with such a space. I sustained this assumption for several weeks, falling asleep in the feeling of being in that new, larger apartment. One afternoon, entirely out of the blue, a friend contacted me, mentioning that a magnificent, spacious apartment in a desirable part of the city had suddenly become available, almost miraculously. It was far beyond what I thought I could afford at the time, yet the circumstances aligned perfectly. The owner was eager to rent it quickly, and through a series of effortless arrangements, the apartment became mine. It was precisely the feeling of spaciousness and comfort I had been assuming. The law of assumption is absolute. It compels the universe to arrange itself according to your dominant inner state. It requires no effort, no struggle, simply the quiet, unwavering conviction of the inner reality. This is not positive thinking, this is knowing. The subconscious mind acts solely on the premises you provide it. When you assume a state, you are feeding your subconscious a new reality. It has no choice but to accept it as truth and begin to organize events, circumstances, and people to reflect that truth in your outer world. Your assumption, steadily maintained, becomes a blueprint that the subconscious diligently constructs. It doesn't ask for proof from the outside, it creates the proof from the inside out. Your feeling of "it is done" registers as a command, and the entire universal mechanism begins to align to fulfill that command. It's an unavoidable, unyielding law. Most men make the colossal mistake of looking to the outer world for validation before they believe. They say, "I'll believe it when I see it." This approach keeps them trapped in their current limitations, for they are waiting for an external change to justify an internal shift. They hope, they wish, they even try to force things, but they do not truly assume the state of already having. They are always in the state of wanting, which only perpetuates the wanting. But the man who understands this law declares, "I will see it because I believe it." He assumes the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and he persists in that assumption, knowing that the physical manifestation is simply the outer echo of his inner conviction. He lives from the end, regardless of what his senses tell him, knowing that the unseen reality is the only true reality. This affirmation is a command you issue to yourself and to the universe. It activates the law of assumption and grounds you in your creative power. Speak it with authority, with the knowing that you are the master of your destiny, not a supplicant. Say this with me now, truly meaning every word. I now assume the feeling of my desire fulfilled. I command my subconscious to manifest this truth. I live from the end, and my reality must conform. Repeat this throughout your day, whenever you catch yourself doubting or focusing on lack. Let it be your steady anchor, pulling you into the desired state. The fourth crucial principle, and one of the most effective techniques for impressing the subconscious, is the state akin to sleep, or SATS. This is the condition of deep relaxation and reduced sensory input, a drowsy, sleepy state where your conscious mind's resistance is lowered and your subconscious is most receptive to new impressions. It is the ideal state for planting your imaginal seed and ensuring its growth. This is the very doorway to the fourth dimension, the place where all creation begins. I discovered the immense power of SATS early in my studies with Abdullah. He insisted that I spend time in this state daily. There was a specific incident involving a friend who was deeply depressed and struggling with chronic financial difficulties. He was convinced that he was destined for a life of struggle, having experienced setback after setback. He came to me utterly defeated, seeing no way out. I explained the power of SATS and instructed him on its application. I told him not to focus on the problem, but on the solution, on the feeling of being financially secure and happy. Each night, as he drifted into that drowsy state, not quite asleep, not quite awake, I told him to construct a simple scene that implied his financial freedom and joy. He chose to imagine himself receiving a bank statement that showed a substantial, unexpected sum of money, and feeling the overwhelming relief and joy, perhaps even telling a trusted friend about his good fortune. He would imagine the exact numbers on the statement, the feeling of the paper in his hands, the smile on his face. He repeated this mental act over and over, gently, lovingly, until he naturally drifted into sleep while still immersed in that feeling. This friend applied the technique diligently for about 4 weeks. He confessed that at times it felt absurd, given his dire circumstances, but he persisted, remembering my words about the absolute nature of the law. Then something truly extraordinary happened. An old, forgotten investment he had made years prior, which he had written off as lost, suddenly paid out significantly more than he had ever anticipated. The company, against all odds, had gone public, and his shares had skyrocketed in value. The sum was precisely what he needed to clear his debts, secure his future, and provide a considerable surplus. He came back to me, beaming, holding the actual bank statement that closely resembled the one he had imagined. The state akin to sleep had bypassed his conscious resistance and impressed his subconscious with a new, prosperous reality. This is not magic, it is law. The subconscious mind is most open to suggestion when the conscious mind, the analytical and doubting part, is quiescent. In the SATS, the gates of logic and skepticism swing open, allowing direct access to the creative powerhouse within. This state is not just for sleep. It's a profound meditative state where you are conscious enough to direct your imagination, yet relaxed enough to bypass inner resistance. Your brainwave patterns shift from beta to alpha and theta, making you highly suggestible to your own directed thoughts and feelings. It's like planting seeds in perfectly prepared, soft soil rather than hard, rocky ground. The impressions made in this state sink deeper, take root faster, and therefore manifest more readily. Most men try to force their desires through sheer willpower during their active waking hours. They mentally wrestle with their problems, constantly analyzing, doubting, and looking for external solutions, all while fully awake, and their conscious mind is bristling with objections. They struggle against the current of their own conditioned beliefs, which makes manifesting an uphill battle, often leading to frustration and failure. They neglect the profound power available to them in the quiet hours. But the man who understands SATS knows that true creation happens in the stillness. He deliberately enters this relaxed, receptive state, not to struggle, but to gently implant the feeling of the wish fulfilled directly into the subconscious. He knows this is the most potent time to impress the infinite power within, bypassing all intellectual arguments and creating directly from the source. He trusts that the seed planted in this state will blossom into physical reality, inevitably. This is the master key to effective creation. The fifth principle, one of the most liberating and transformative truths I can offer you, is revision. This is the act of looking back at any event in your past, any conversation, any experience, and deliberately rescripting it in your imagination to align with your ideal outcome. Revision is not denial. It is the radical understanding that your past is not fixed and unchangeable. It is simply a memory, and memory is as fluid and malleable as your imagination. By revising your past, you change its influence on your present, and more importantly, you alter your future. This is the true meaning of forgiveness, and it is a power that truly sets you free. I had a personal experience with revision that fundamentally changed my understanding of its power. In my early days of lecturing in New York, I often traveled by train. On one particular journey, I had a very unpleasant encounter with a conductor. He was rude, dismissive, and made me feel utterly insignificant. I left the train feeling angry, agitated, and replaying the scene over and over in my mind, allowing his negativity to poison my day. I felt wronged and insulted. Later that evening, as I prepared for sleep, the incident replayed in my mind. The anger flared again, but then I remembered the principle of revision. I lay in bed, and I deliberately closed my eyes and reimagined the entire encounter. Instead of the rude conductor, I imagined him being exceptionally kind, courteous, and respectful. I replayed the conversation, but this time he was smiling, helpful, and pleasant. I felt the warmth of his respectful tone, the ease of our interaction. I imagined him bidding me a pleasant journey and me responding with genuine gratitude. I replayed this revised scene until I felt a profound sense of peace and satisfaction, entirely replacing the anger and resentment. I fell asleep in this revised feeling. A few days later, I found myself on the same train route with the same conductor. To my astonishment, when he approached me, he was the picture of kindness and courtesy. He greeted me warmly, asked about my destination, and was utterly pleasant throughout our interaction. It was as if he was a completely different person, or rather, I was a different person who evoked a different response from him. The man had not changed. I had changed the internal state that reflected him. By revising my memory, I had altered the future encounter. I understood then that revision is not just about healing the past. It is about recreating your future by changing the very root cause of your experience, what you hold in. Memory you perpetuate, what you revise you transform. This applies to every single memory, every slight, every regret. The subconscious mind has no concept of time. It only knows what you impress upon it now. When you revise a past event in your imagination, you are not simply changing a memory. You are creating a new impressional truth for your subconscious. This new truth then becomes the basis for future manifestations. It realigns your energy, dismantles old negative patterns, and frees you from the emotional chains of past hurts. You are literally rewriting your personal history and, by extension, your destiny. This is why it is said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." When you revise, you are forgiving the past and yourself, allowing a new, more desirable future to unfold. Most men are imprisoned by their past. They constantly replay past grievances, past failures, past hurts, allowing these unrevised memories to dictate their current feelings and future expectations. They believe the past is fixed, an unchangeable record that defines who they are and what they can achieve. They carry the burden of regret and resentment, which unconsciously perpetuates cycles of similar negative experiences. They are slaves to what has been, but the man who understands revision knows that the past is but a malleable dream. He actively revises any unpleasant memory, transforming it into a positive experience in his imagination, knowing that by doing so, he cleanses his consciousness and directs his future toward more desirable outcomes. He becomes the author of his own story, not just a character in a predetermined play. He uses this power not to deny reality, but to transform it at its very source. This affirmation is a powerful tool for conscious creation through the art of revision. It's a process statement that empowers you to actively reshape your personal history and, by extension, your future. Say this with intent, knowing that your imagination is the ultimate eraser and creator. Repeat after me. My imagination is sovereign. I actively revise my past, transforming every memory into a blessing. My present is perfected by my revised history, and my future is glorious. Use this whenever a negative memory surfaces. Stop, close your eyes, and repeat it, then perform the revision. Let it be your constant reminder of your creative control. The sixth profound principle that assures your manifestations, one that removes all anxiety about how your desires will unfold, is the bridge of incidents. Once you have made your assumption and impressed your subconscious with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you have done your part. The universe, or rather, the law, then constructs an inevitable series of events, a natural and logical sequence, to bring your desired state into physical manifestation. This chain of events, which you perceive as external circumstances, coincidences, or lucky breaks, is what I call the bridge of incidents. You do not need to concern yourself with it. It simply must unfold. Let me share another personal experience that cemented this understanding for me. After my return from Barbados, having successfully manifested the trip, I found myself in New York without any immediate professional engagements. I was eager to share my insights and teachings, but had no platform. I knew I had to begin lecturing, but where would I start? Who would organize it? I had no connections in the spiritual lecture circuit at that time. Instead of actively trying to find a venue or an organizer, I simply went within and applied the law of assumption. Each night, I would imagine myself standing before a captivated audience, feeling the energy in the room, hearing the applause, and experiencing the profound satisfaction of sharing these truths. I didn't worry about the size of the audience or the specific hall. I just focused on the feeling of successfully delivering my message and the positive reception. I felt myself as a successful lecturer, my words resonating with those who sought truth. I held this assumption for a few weeks. Then, one day, I received a seemingly random phone call. An acquaintance, whom I hadn't spoken to in months, called me out of the blue. He mentioned that he had recently attended a lecture by another speaker, and during the Q&A, someone asked a question that immediately made him think of me and my unique perspective. This led him to contact a small lecture hall that was looking for new speakers. He put my name forward purely on a hunch. Within days, I had a booking for my first public lecture in New York. The hall was small, but the audience was indeed captivated, and the experience was exactly as I had imagined. That single phone call was the beginning of my lecturing career, the first step on the bridge of incidents that carried me from obscurity to teaching thousands. I didn't seek out that call. The law orchestrated it. The subconscious mind, once impressed with your fulfilled desire, automatically begins to arrange the external world to reflect that inner state. It is an unseen intelligence, a divine architect that knows precisely how to connect all the necessary dots. It will move people, create opportunities, bring forth ideas, and orchestrate seemingly coincidental events to bring your assumption to fruition. Your job is not to interfere with this process, to try and manipulate the bridge. Your job is simply to stay on the end, in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Any attempt to force the how only introduces doubt and prolongs the manifestation. The bridge of incidents unfolds naturally, often in ways you could never have conceived with your rational mind. It is a testament to the infinite intelligence that governs all creation. Most men, after forming a desire, immediately begin to stress about the how. They create elaborate plans, worry about every potential obstacle, and exhaust themselves trying to force a particular outcome. They look for logical, linear paths, and when those paths don't immediately appear, they become disheartened and abandon their desire. They stand on the bridge, staring down into the abyss, rather than trusting the bridge will carry them. They try to be the architect of the bridge, rather than simply walking across it. But the man who understands the bridge of incidents knows that the path to his desire is already being paved, unseen, by an infallible intelligence. He never worries about the how. He simply maintains his assumption, his feeling of the wish fulfilled, and allows the bridge of incidents to naturally appear and carry him to his destination. He trusts the invisible plan, knowing it is always perfect, always effortless, and always precise. This trust is crucial. The seventh essential principle, and perhaps the one that separates the successful manifester from the perennial striver, is persistence in the assumption. It is not enough to assume your wish fulfilled once. You must dwell in that assumption, consistently returning to the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it solidifies into physical fact. Persistence is the unwavering faith, the steadfast resolve to maintain your inner state regardless of outer appearances. It is the spiritual muscle that ensures your desire moves from the unseen to the seen. I have seen countless individuals, filled with initial enthusiasm, assume their desired state for a day or two, only to abandon it when the outer world presents no immediate corroboration. They then declare, "It doesn't work for me." This is precisely where persistence becomes paramount. I remember vividly a period when I was entirely dependent on my lectures for income, and there were times when attendance dwindled and my financial situation became precarious. The temptation to panic, to feel lack, was immense. The outer senses screamed insufficiency. In one such period, faced with significant bills and dwindling funds, I could have easily succumbed to worry. Instead, I remembered my own teachings and Abdullah's absolute insistence on persistence. Each day, I would dedicate specific times to re-enter the feeling of abundance. I would imagine counting large sums of money, feeling the texture of the bills, hearing the rustle of them, feeling utterly secure and prosperous. I didn't just do it at night in SATs, I did it throughout the day, in brief mental interludes. When the feeling of lack or worry crept in, I would consciously turn away from it and return to the feeling of abundance. I would silently affirm to myself, "I am richly supplied. My needs are always met and more than met." This was not a one-time act. It was a daily, hourly discipline. There were days when it felt like an uphill battle, when the evidence of my senses was so compellingly negative. But I refused to waver. I knew that the assumption, persistently maintained, must manifest. Within a few weeks, the lecture halls began to fill again, seemingly out of nowhere. New opportunities to speak arose. Unexpected gifts and donations appeared. My income not only recovered, but significantly surpassed what it had been. The physical world, though stubborn, eventually yielded to my persistent inner conviction. This is the power of unwavering faith. Your subconscious mind is like a fertile garden, but it requires consistent watering and sunlight for the seeds to grow. A single, fleeting impression may not be enough to override years of ingrained negative patterns or the constant bombardment of conflicting external stimuli. Persistence is the spiritual force that ensures the seed takes firm root and sprouts. Every time you return to your desired feeling, you are strengthening the impression, reinforcing the new belief, and making it undeniably real for your subconscious. It's like gently but firmly training a child. You must repeat the lesson until it is fully absorbed and understood. It requires discipline, but it is never a struggle. It is a joyous return to the truth of your desire. Most men approach manifestation like a casual experiment. They try it once or twice, and if the physical world doesn't immediately conform, they declare it a failure and return to their old ways of worry and complaint. They lack the staying power, the spiritual endurance, to persist in their chosen state. They are swayed by every shifting wind of external circumstance, constantly changing their inner mind, thus preventing any stable manifestation. They stop just short of the miracle. But the man who understands persistence knows that the only true failure is to abandon his assumption. He recognizes that every moment spent in the feeling of the wish fulfilled is a moment of creative power. He doggedly, yet lovingly, returns to his desired state, knowing that his unwavering inner conviction will inevitably compel the outer world to conform. He trusts the law implicitly, holding firm until the unseen becomes the undeniably seen. This affirmation is a declaration of your unwavering commitment and spiritual fortitude. It fortifies your will and reinforces your dedication to your desired reality. Speak it with the strength of a mountain, knowing that your persistence is the key to all manifestation. Repeat this with me, powerfully. I am unwavering in my assumption. I persist in the feeling of my wish fulfilled, regardless of appearances. My faith is absolute, and my manifestation is inevitable. Say this whenever you feel your resolve weaken. Let it be your battle cry against doubt, your testament to the power of your divine will. The eighth and final principle, often the most challenging for men to master, is detachment from the outcome. This is not indifference or apathy. It is the complete release of anxiety about when or how your desire will manifest after you have impressed your subconscious. It is the ultimate act of faith, knowing that once the seed is planted, the universe will bring forth the harvest in its perfect timing and in the most harmonious way. To detach is to truly trust the law, allowing the creative power to work unimpeded. I once worked with a gentleman who desperately wanted to sell his house. He had a specific buyer in mind, a specific price, and a very tight deadline due to an impending relocation. He was constantly anxious, checking his phone, pushing his agent, and fretting over every detail. He would imagine the sale, but then immediately follow it with frantic worry about whether it would actually happen with that buyer by that date for that price. His anxiety was so potent, it was actually blocking the manifestation. I explained to him that he needed to do his inner work, impress the subconscious, and then completely detach. I told him to stop trying to manipulate the how and the when. He was to simply assume the feeling of the house sold, the money in his account, and the relief of being free to move. He was to imagine himself celebrating the successful sale with his family, packing his belongings with joy, and feeling the freedom of his new life. Crucially, I instructed him to release the specific buyer, the specific deadline, and even the exact price, trusting that if the feeling of the wish fulfilled was strong, the best possible outcome would unfold. He found this incredibly difficult at first. His rational mind kept pulling him back to the specific details and the looming deadline, but he diligently practiced. Each night, he would enter SATs and focus solely on the feeling of having sold the house, the relief, the freedom, the financial security. He would deliberately let go of the specific buyer and the time frame. He surrendered the how completely to the infinite intelligence. Within a month, the original buyer he had fixated on fell through. For a moment, he panicked. But he quickly reminded himself of the principle of detachment and returned to the feeling of the house already sold. Then, quite unexpectedly, a new offer came in from a different buyer, at a slightly higher price than he had initially hoped for, and with a closing date that perfectly aligned with his relocation needs, making his transition even smoother than his original plan. It was not his preferred how, but it was a better outcome than he had meticulously planned. His detachment allowed the law to orchestrate an even more perfect bridge of incidents. The subconscious mind works best when it is free from the interference of your anxious conscious mind. When you continually fret over the outcome, you are, in essence, sending mixed signals. You are assuming the wish fulfilled, but simultaneously assuming its absence through your worry. This creates resistance and slows down or blocks the manifestation. Detachment is the ultimate act of allowing. It signifies that you have absolute faith in the law, knowing that the seed you have planted will grow, regardless of your conscious effort to supervise its growth. It is trusting the universal intelligence to find the path of least resistance and greatest good, which is always beyond your current mental comprehension. When you detach, you are stating, "It is done, and I trust it is done perfectly." Most men cling to their desires with an iron grip of anxiety. They obsess over the specific details of the manifestation, trying to control every variable, micromanaging the universe, so to speak. This desperate clinging stems from a lack of trust in the law, a fundamental doubt that the universe will deliver. They believe they must make it happen through constant effort and worry, rather than allow it to happen through trust and surrender. This fear-based control only pushes the desire further away. But the man who understands detachment knows that once the seed is planted, his work is done. He trusts that the universe is infinitely capable and wise, and will bring forth his desire in the most perfect and harmonious way, often far better than his limited conscious mind could ever conceive. He releases control, knowing that true power